welcome everyone. Thank you very much for attending our Ask the Experts session today with Connect by Nova. You may have been expecting the lovely Hannah. Unfortunately for everyone, today you got me. Poor Hannah has had a family emergency at the very last minute. And so as with everything at the CML group, if something happens after 6 o'clock, it's me that gets the job. So you got me today, but I am here just purely to introduce our wonderful experts who have given up their time to give us some information today, specifically on the accounting and US tax markets here in Cayman. First of all, I just want to give you a little bit of an insight into who Connect by Nova is. I know some of you on this call will be working with us currently, but some will be new to us. First of all, my name is Louise Reed. I'm actually the managing partner of the CML group, which includes CML Recruitment, Nova Recruitment, and also now Connect by Nova. Connect is recently launched. It's a social enterprise committed to career advancement, soon to be a registered NPO. I hope we can say we are fully registered not-for-profit very, very soon. We're just going through that process. But along with hosting these webinars, and we also do online training, the beautiful thing about Connect by Nova is that it's all about one-on-one individual coaching and help through career advice and action plans. So that can be anything from updating a resume, coming to us to optimize your LinkedIn, to working with you very specifically week to week through your application process for jobs, internships, university, college, whatever it is you might be doing to try and further your career. We will be there to support you, give you advice a little or as much as you need. So that's who we are. If you want any more information, please do feel free to reach out to Hannah. She's always happy to take any comments and questions to the end. So today, as I said, we're very excited to be hosting Ask the Experts. I think this is our fourth Ask the Experts. They've been very, very popular. And as I say, this one today is on accounting and US tax. And we're very, very privileged and happy to have two very experienced people here from Pwc Cayman Islands. Jorge Zaldivar, I hope I've said that right. I'm very English, yep. So I opened it up by welcoming George. And so he told me anything's fine, but I know he's just being polite to me, really. He is a tax manager over in Pwc for the Cayman Islands and has been for over 6 years. I'm going to let him do his own introductions there because he will do it far better than me. But I also want to introduce the third person on the screen you will see there, who is the lovely Emily Solly. Emily works for the Human Resources Department for Pwc, and although won't be here speaking through the main questions, she will be here at the end to answer any questions you have that might be HR related to do with applications and things like that. So I'm sure we will have lots of questions for her. Before I hand over, I do want to let you know that this is an open forum for questions. We don't have formal presentations. We're not here to talk and for you to just listen. This is your opportunity to speak with experts and ask the questions you've always wanted to know, ask questions about positions, the market, whatever it is within this area that you're interested in. We welcome your questions. We don't need you, some of you will be happy to know, to come on video or to speak. What you can do is type your question in the question and answers box, which should be at the bottom of your screens, I think, or in the comments box. And ideally, you can write those specifically just to me, but if you write them to the whole group, that's fine. I will still answer those and speak those for you and ask them to the panel. So please do send your questions throughout the conversation. We will be answering them as we go along. You don't have to wait till the end. I'll be having a look. Okay, so please don't be shy. It's what makes this really valuable. So I will end my presentation there and hand over to these wonderful people. And we're now going to do the dreaded, I'm going to share my screen and swap my share my screen. So
you can keep yours, it's fine.
Are you sure? Okay, yeah. I will leave I will leave it back to this one, and then you can see. But I will hand you over now to Jorge. Thank you very much again for being here, and I'll leave the rest to you for a few moments till questions come in.
Thanks, Louise. So a bit of background. I graduated in 2013 from UCCI with a bachelor's in accounting, business administration with a concentration in accounting. Then I started working with Pwc in December of the same year, and I've been here ever since. So we had a question saying, what is accounting and US tax? Because again, you say US tax manager and it's a Cayman Islands, and everyone goes like, what tax? We don't have tax in the Cayman Islands, which is correct. We don't. So accounting, imagine your bank account for a business. If you want to know how much you're spending, how much money you're depositing, you go to your bank account, you see the transactions list, and you can do a health check, a financial health check, see how much money is coming in, how much money is going out, and plan accordingly. Businesses do the same thing. So accounting is recording, analyzing, and then presenting the financial transactions of a business. Sometimes it goes beyond financial transactions, but in the Caribbean, and especially in the Cayman Islands, financial transactions are the biggest and most popular ones, given an offshore, that we're an offshore financial center. In terms of US tax, we have thousands of hedge funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, all registered in the Cayman Islands. And all of those need their financial information to be prepared, analyzed, and calculated, and then reported to their investors, because US people are taxed on global income, doesn't matter where it's coming from. So here we are, and what we do is we take the accounting part, we calculate their taxable income, we prepare statements, send them to the investors, and then the investors use that to further calculate, because sometimes what we give them is not everything. They have to compile it with their other investments and then report it to the Internal Revenue Service and meet their filing obligations with the IRS and pay their taxes, hopefully, because you're not supposed to avoid taxes. Then in terms of what is US tax, again, governments generally need money. The way that they get this money is by taxing people. In the Cayman Islands, we don't have direct taxation, so we pay our taxes in the form of stamp duty, which you might not see, or you might see if you're bringing something at the airport and you have to declare it and pay your stamp duty. The other way is through everything that we import to the island. Businesses have to pay 22%, just like you, give it to the government. And that is one source of revenue. In the United States, they have the same thing, except that they tax your income as well directly. So US tax for us is, for the hedge funds, calculating the income for the year, whether it is US or foreign. We prepare forms, statements that are provided to the investors saying, this is how much interest income you got for the year, capital gains, losses, and this is what you're supposed to include on your tax return. And that is what we essentially do, except that we also do it for insurance companies, mutual funds, hedge funds, private, not-for-profit organizations. For example, the Jasmine, which used to have another name, I can't remember now what it is, Cayman Hospice Care, I believe it is. So Jasmine has a US entity to receive donations from the US as well. They have to file a tax return in the US because they have a US entity and they're receiving money. They don't have to pay taxes, of course, because they're not for profit, but they still have to file a tax return. So things like that is what we do on the island. How did I get into this field? Well, when I was in high school, I did quite a lot of business classes. So it happens that I was good at it. I got good grades on it. So I moved directly into an associate's in business administration at UCCI, which then turned into a bachelor's in accounting. From there, I started working with Pwc in 2013. And at the same time, concurrently, I did my CPA, which is a certified public accountant. There are multiple accounting qualifications. this is a US one. And then this is how we got where we are now. Which opportunities do we have within the field? There are endless opportunities as an accountant. Even if you do a bachelor's in accounting, you do not have to work as an accountant or work for a big four accounting firm or even the big seven. It doesn't matter. You can work for one of the fund administration people. You can work in marketing if you want with an accounting degree. So an accounting degree doesn't really limit you to what you can do. In terms of career progression and what qualifications you need. So generally you would need a bachelor's degree. If you plan to be qualified as an accountant, ideally you would get a bachelor's degree in accounting, finance, economics, or business admin, because you will have to have certain accounting credits in order to be given that chartered accountant qualification. Once you move away from the bachelor's degree, you have to do a master's degree now. This has changed a little bit since I graduated. Now they require a certain amount of credits. Now it's 150, I believe. When I graduated, it was 130, which means that you either have to do a master's degree or take additional classes to make up the 150. You don't actually have to have a master's degree. You just need the 150.
I can also comment on that, Jorge. Currently, it is 150, but it depends on the state that you're sitting at, because different states would have different requirements, and some of them are stricter than others, and it depends on what you're eligible for. And though Jorge mentioned that you could do a bachelor's in economics and whatnot, the path to least resistance, I would say, is to do one in accounting, because then you would have acquired those credits much quicker. Whereas if you were to choose, let's say, a bachelor's in administration or something else, then you will definitely need to do that master's in order to obtain those additional credits, which I think if you can avoid that, I would say just avoid it altogether.
Yeah, as Emily said, for example, I'm a New York CPA. New York has very strict requirements on how many accounting credits you have to have before they actually give you a license. I think it's 42 the last time I checked. So if you don't have a bachelor's in accounting, you will have to take the additional classes or do a master's in accounting in order to meet that requirement to get certified.
I actually had a question relating to this, Jorge. Somebody was asking, what are the best states for international students to apply for a CPA? In your opinion?
I would say it's up to you. They have different requirements. It depends on how many credits you have. So, for example, as I said, New York has very specific requirements on how many credits in accounting you need, how many business credits, how many finance credits. Some states do not require that. They just require a number of credits without specifying the subject. But when you register with NASBA to take the exam, they will give you a list of all the states and all the requirements that they have. I would recommend that before you declare a state for the CPA, if you're doing the CPA, you don't have to do the CPA, you can do the ACCA, the CA, any of those. There's many of them. They're all recognized in the Cayman Islands. I would recommend that you go through the list and see what the actual state wants before you register with that state and compare that to what you have. From my experience, all the credits that you get at UCCI, I can't speak for ICCI, but I believe it's the same thing, do count. They're all counted. You don't have to revalidate or retake any of them. I believe a long time ago, there was this whole conversation about our schools not being accredited and some of the credits not flowing through to the NASBA. I did not experience that at all. This was in 2013. They took all the credits. I didn't have to redo anything.
Okay, interesting. And would as you know, sort of being here in Cayman, it's mostly US tax. Would a CPA be slightly advantageous compared to an ACCA or the CA because it's US based qualification?
Yeah. So for US tax, there are two separate qualifications. There's a CPA, which covers everything. There is the EA, which is an enrolled agent. That's an actual qualification that you get directly from the US government. NASBA and the AICPA are not the US government, but the actual Internal Revenue Service gives you an EA, and that's very similar to a CPA, except that you don't have to do, if you're familiar with a CPA, the CPA has 3 exams. There is business, finance, accounting, all those topics are covered into those exams. The EA is more just tax, which would be essentially the equivalent to a CT, Chartered Tax Advisor, CTA in the UK.
And an EA, for those who are on the webinar who aren't Caymanian, would an EA be recognized in terms of the immigration process? Would it be noted as a qualified accountant in terms of getting a work permit?
I believe so, but Emily, correct me if I'm wrong on this one. Because it is it's not an accounting qualification, but it is a tax professional qualification.
Yeah, personally, I think it depends on the position you're applying for, because that's what immigration is looking at, right? To see, okay, what qualifications you have as an expat versus the Caymanian who's here and they already have their qualifications, and which one holds more. And also you're looking at experience with that as well. At the firm, though we have people who have various degrees and qualifications, when it comes to qualification in accounting, the ones we looked at is ACCA and CPA. And then when it comes to CFA and the rest of them, then we say, well, that's more of your choice. That's more of like a preference for you kind of thing. But our requirement is that all of our experienced hires for these type of positions, they have the ACCA or the CPA.
Okay, excellent. We actually have another question here. Somebody who's working for PwC Ireland. So they would like to know, do you actually have to have US tax experience in order to work for PwC Cayman in the tax department?
Well, we don't only do, it's obviously related to US tax, but we don't only do compliance. We do consulting, and we also do FATCA CRS, which is an automatic data exchange with other governments. We actually do have an Irish person in our team that came from Dublin. I don't believe he came from a US tax team or is a CPA. I think he has an EA. So that's how he's working with us at the moment.
Okay. Thank you.
Obviously, the actual US tax experience is an advantage, but it is not a all or nothing situation.
Yeah, if you've got the qualifications.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's probably more applicable depending on the level that they're being hired for, because obviously someone, let's say, someone on an associate level who's just out of university, we're looking for that person to set their CPA, whereas someone, if we're hiring them more on a senior associate level, then we would look, okay, they have, I would say, thinking of our current tax group, I would say most of them do have the EA, or they're have applied or some involved in that. Yeah, working towards it. Yeah, it's typically between the EA and the CPA. Some of them have both, some of them only have one, but it's definitely between the two.
And we also have lawyers, so it's not only accountants. Because remember, taxation is law with numbers. So we have lawyers in our teams as well. So that's another qualification that is fully recognized by the IRS. So if you have to talk to the IRS, you have to be a certified accountant or a lawyer. So that's also another path to get into this.
Yeah.
So as you can see, it's not all accounting only. Yeah,
no, it absolutely makes sense. And I think that's a really interesting way to put it. for somebody who's worked in sales and with people all her life, law with numbers doesn't sound all that appealing to me. That's why we do these things, because for other people that would be the most exciting thing, and I think that really adds a dimension to it as well. So yeah, I think that's a really, really good way of describing it. In terms of the opportunities in the field, like you talked about associate, you talk, what is generally sort of the career progression? What does it look like, and how long does it take? Can you give us an idea of what sort of that journey might look like for somebody coming in, for instance, sort of straight from college or ready to sit their CPA?
Yeah, so as an undergraduate, so straight out of college, you would come in as an associate. Generally, after a year and a half, you change to being an experienced associate. Generally, after you pass your CPA or very close to passing your CPA, you will switch to a senior associate. That would be after year 3, most likely. Then you have 3 years as a senior associate to get everything together, to get your license. You have to have a qualification in order to be promoted to a manager. So after about 3 to 4 years as a senior associate, generally you'll become a manager. As a manager, you have anywhere from 3 to 5 years in that position. The next step up would be a senior manager, which after manager, everything is generally between 3 and 5 years on the progression. After senior manager, you would have director. And at director, things change a little bit. You can be a director forever. You can be a director for less than forever, 5 to 8 years. And then after director, eventually, if that's your goal, if you're working towards that, and if you show that you can be a partner, then you're admitted into the partnership. That would generally be between 10 and 14 years after you started as an associate.
Okay. And could you give me an idea as well, somebody's asked this, but an idea of what sort of the starting salary would look like, and sort of earning opportunities, not necessarily just at PwC, I mean sort of in the industry that you know of?
Emily, I need your help with this one because it's been a while. For starting salary, it's been a while.
I would actually, because we have various starting salaries in the firm, and I know tax change recently, but I would say starting salary is definitely in the high 40s for an associate, per annum.
CI.
Yeah, CI.
Sorry, I was muted there. Wonderful, thank you, Emily. We have another question as well. Somebody that's on the webinar is planning to sit the CPA exam. Are you aware of any study groups on Ireland that they could connect with?
Not on the island, but there are endless resources. There are Facebook study groups that are international.
I would suggest. Yeah, and I would say to connect with CIPA. They would probably have better guidance on that, because there was some information that was communicated to me internally just yesterday, and I think CIPA might be able to help with that, or even guide them in the right direction when it comes to CPA and study group.
Yeah, CIPA usually has mentorship programs too. So through the mentorship program with CIPA, you might be exposed. Because I also participated on that. I had a mentor from Pwc. That's how I was introduced to Pwc when I was in my 2nd to 3rd year in college.
Yeah, I'd be very surprised if there wasn't some kind of group, because I know certainly the ACCA group get together and have socials. I've presented there as well, just in terms of actually the recruitment side of things. So I would think that there's an equivalent, even if it's not as just a call to find some mentors, maybe something that perhaps Connect can look into and advise as well. Excellent. So another question we have is, could you, we've sort of talked about this in terms of the CPA. Is there anything in terms of education, qualifications, or anything particularly that stands out on a resume for an application for these types of roles? I suppose that's sort of headed more towards you, Emily, there, in terms of what really will make you go, this person we need to interview today.
I would say, well, definitely the qualifications, but I mean, to be quite honest, well, if you're an associate or or at least on an associate level, typically you've just left university, and then you're about then to study for your CPA or ACCA. So with that being said, I would say mostly their grades. That's something that would stand out, as well as what they've studied in the past. Because if we're hiring someone at an associate level and we're going to invest in them to sit the CPA or ACCA, because that's always the goal, like no question asked. Like that's, if you're joining us as an associate from university, the plan is you're going to be sitting the CPA and ACCA. And in order for us to make that investment, we need to have looked at whether or not you're qualified to sit or eligible to sit those exams. And so we were definitely looked into what that person has studied, and as well as their grades and where they are currently, and if it's an investment that would make sense for the firm.
And if you, for example, it's a 4-year degree. So if you did not do so great in one subject in year 1, that's not a deterrent. As long as you've shown that you've progressed, your grades have improved, that looks good. And why is the GPA important is because, believe it or not, there's always, I hear this every time, and I heard it when I was in school, it's like, when are we ever going to use this in real life? Well, when it comes to accounting, everything you do in university will show up on the CPA and will come back to you at some point in real life. I still have my university books and I look at them every once in a while, just going back to how did I do that back then? Because I have to do it now.
So true. There are so many subjects that you do at university that you genuinely will, it arms you with life experiences, but you don't use it. But I think accounting and the law are the two subjects where it's going to follow you right through to partnership. You're still going to be going, okay, that was that, and it's changed slightly, but this was the original. So I think so in other words, you're saying keep your head down and work hard.
Exactly.
And the flip side of that question, coming more from me as a recruiter, what would you say in terms of people who are applying to these types of roles? What's a big no-no? What have you seen that you're like, no, that don't do that? You not necessarily qualifications, but is there anything you see often that sort of puts you off or makes things difficult or anything?
Not so much. I would just say if you're filling out an application, just make sure what you're answering in the application is applicable. Like if you, let's say if there's an application for something and there are specific guidelines to say only applied if you fit these criteria. Like I can give prime example. I mean, I just recently completed the applications for summer internships, and and there we had specific guidelines on what was required or not required. And I mean, I still receive applications that were not applicable for the role. And it just showed that the person clearly did not read what was there on the website. So it's just basic things like that. Just pay attention to detail.
Yeah, and in terms of our tax department, because we do have advisory, audit, tax, what I found is that tax is not so monotonous. It's not the same all the time. We have a lot of changing environment, changing tax laws. They have a new president in the United States that wants to change the tax law all over again, even though they did that a few years ago. They want to redo that all over again. So it's always something new, something changing. So if you're answering something that was not there, or applying for something that was not there, what does that show us is that you're not paying attention to detail, which is a key thing in both audit, tax, well, anywhere really, but tax and audit specifically.
No, I think, yeah, from a recruiter's point of view, I'll always say, please also say what you're applying for.
Yeah.
Because again, so many applications, it's just a resume attached to an email, and I'm like, well, okay, let's have a guess at this. So yeah, please
Customize it. Customize it. Firms like to see things being customized to them. Stalk a few people. We all have LinkedIn and every kind of information out there.
So true, so true. Could you give us an idea of what the market looks like in Cayman for accounting professionals interested in tax? Like, what does that look like?
Tax is always in high demand because it's a specialized area, so we don't have a lot of supply for that on the island. So I would say we're always in high demand, but Emily can confirm this with me. We're always looking for people.
Yeah, no, for sure. Tax is a very specialized area, as Jorge mentioned, and I think the fortunate and unfortunate thing is that because Cayman is a tax-free or somewhat jurisdictions, that obviously a lot of the locals don't realize that these type of positions exist, right? And so therefore they never go to school and acquire the necessary skills or knowledge to become available for these roles. I mean, I think even it's not even just in Cayman, but world, like globally, I feel there's a shortage of of people for tax roles. Like we're always looking for qualified tax persons, and I mean sometimes maybe they do have the interest, but then depending on the role we're recruiting for, which is typically a senior associate role, then they don't have the necessarily experience in that regard. So then it's always a bit more difficult because obviously in order to bring someone on a work permit, they need to be you know, on a senior associate level and above. And so sometimes that can be difficult, but then the talent isn't available locally. So it's just, I suppose, just share the word around and let them know that these type of positions exist. And if that's something they want to work in the future, then I suppose just start now from university and start looking into it and knowing that once they acquire the right skill and they get into tax, that they'll forever be in high demand.
And I said, we've both said that tax is highly specialized, which it is, but that doesn't mean that just because you did 5 years in tax, that's all you're ever going to be able to do. We've had people leave tax and go into fund accounting, captive insurance. So just because you're in tax and it's highly specialized, that doesn't mean that your skills are not transferable outside of tax.
Yeah, once you're a certified accountant, the world is your oyster, to be honest.
Yeah, you can do anything.
I mean, we have quite a lot of our people, you know, they'll spend a few years here and then they'll go and be a manager at some bank or financial controller somewhere. I mean, once you're qualified as an accountant, you're good, you're set.
Yeah. And I think, again, from a recruiter's perspective, we definitely, I recently spoke at the CEPA conference, and it was very obvious from there that the market is so buoyant at the moment that those opportunities, the sort of traditional career path for accountants is sort of almost expanded, you know, where a lot of people would come in, do tax, do audit, and then maybe go into captives or funds. Now we're seeing a lot more opportunity in sort of actuarial positions or within the reinsurance, and lots of family offices moving to Ireland. So there's and analyst roles are increasing as well. So I think certainly, like Emily said, sort of if you can get your head down, study for that CPA, ACCA, CA, whatever you're going to do, and then put the time in to become specialize in something, there's still opportunities to move. And that leads me on to one of the questions that's popped up. We've got some people on the call who are really just starting to think about this as a career. They're perhaps a little bit in the start of their career journey. In terms of that, it's great to hear that there's demand, and if they can, have that motivation to get to that point. But for those who are sort of starting right from the very back, how would they go about getting an internship? How do you apply, and what do you look for from an intern in this area?
Well, our applications for the summer internships typically run from, I would say, mid-February through mid-April. So the application period for this summer is already closed. I've already issued all the contracts, everything that's done for the year. So I would say the next opportunity really would be to look out for next year's applications, which we always promote, and those you can typically apply through our website. And then from there, really, it's because it's so competitive and we have limited spots. So typically we would look out for those who are studying accounting and who are following that path, because obviously we want to ensure that those people do have that opportunity to gain their experience in the field that they are trying to specialize in. So I would say that's basically it. You have to wait for applications to open.
And you don't have to rely only on the accounting firms. CEPA runs mentorship programs. Try to be part of that. The universities here, at least, they link a mentor with people who are doing the undergraduate degree. And from the mentors, you can get a lot of ideas on what kind of work they do, what the day-to-day operations are like, tour the office. That's one of the things I did back then, Strathfield House.
Oh, I remember. Opposite Rackham's.
I
remember. And also to point out that hence the name Connect, one of the services that Connect offers to anybody who comes through is the opportunity to connect with people like Jorge and Emily, where you can just spend 20 minutes on the telephone to an expert and just really to decide if that's something that you want to do, some advice if things, are seeming like they're going off, or just sort of how you can stand out and, when internships are coming up. So we can, again, help people through that process of applying. We don't apply for you, but we'll alert you when PwC opens their internship and let you know these are the criteria. If you want us to give a little read over what you're going to send to Emily so that she's happy to see it, then that's the type of thing that Connect also do as well. So there's lots of opportunities out there to get connected, with all the associations and things like that.
Yeah, and then Louise, sorry, right here 1 sec. And then one other thing as well, because I believe you mentioned that sometimes you get expats who join these calls. One of the thing is our work experience is reserved only for Caymanians. So that's one thing, because I mean, it's just the law.
Yeah.
Work experience internships, there's no such thing for a work permit, so it's just unfortunate that it's actually, like you say, it wouldn't be adhering to the law. So you really need to head down, study, do really well in those CPA, and then speak to Emily.
But I mean, PwC is in 153 countries, I believe. So PwC
even more.
It's not just here. There's a PwC likely close to where you are.
Yeah.
Experience is experience, no matter what you do it on. At least that will give you an idea if it's something that you want to do with your life, especially if you're first year undergraduate and you have no idea if you actually want to do accounting, and you're just taking the one accounting class. A little bit of experience with an accounting firm will help you decide if that's something that you want to do for the rest of your life. But then again, rest of your life, I put quote marks on that because you can go anywhere with an accounting degree, not just be an accountant.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it, isn't it? It's global. It allows you to travel if COVID-19 allows us to, and it also offers some flexibility. We've got lots of questions coming in, so I'm going to do quick fire round now for you two. We're getting close to the end. And we have a question here. After passing the CPA exam, how easy is it to get the required work experience before obtaining the license?
You get it so it depends on where you are. Some people do a CPA exam while they're doing the master's degree. Some people do a CPA exam while they're working. I did my CPA while I was working. So by the time that I passed all the exams, I already had the experience that they needed, because I believe it's all down to 1 year now for all the states.
Okay.
And if you're not, then once you join the firm, they will count all your tax, audit, or advisory experience towards the CPA. Generally, it's just going to be your first year of working will count towards that.
Okay, so you can come in as semi-qualified and then do your time and then become qualified while you're working. Yeah. Okay. Another question, did COVID-19 have any significant impact in the accounting industry?
Not so far. It's not. We were flexible before. We were allowed to work and able to work comfortably remotely. So there wasn't, at least for me, there wasn't a big impact on the remote working, the lockdowns. It was all business as usual. In terms of the businesses that we work for, we haven't seen a big impact, negative impact on them. Maybe not yet. Maybe it will happen to some of them because the financial markets are a bit up, down, crazy at the moment. But no major bad impact, I would say, from a working perspective or to our clients.
Yeah, and again, as I mentioned, I was sitting on the panel at the CEPA conference a couple of weeks ago, and this question, the whole conference was about this question, and it was very apparent that, sort of with the three pillars of our industries, which is development, housing and property is booming, and the financial services industry is booming. Unfortunately, that the hospitality and tourism industry is obviously being impacted the most. But I can also give a reflection on that to those asking from sort of the jobs market perspective. We've been carrying data since COVID happened, and we saw a very slight drop in job offers in May. A slight drop in jobs taken in April, and that's it. The rest of the time has been incredibly busy. In fact, it surprises all. And if you'd asked me last February or March if this is what I thought we would look like a year later, we've actually had the most employment activity across the three companies in a decade. So as we primarily service the legal and the accounting industries, I think it's probably fair to say it's impacted us in a positive way, in the sense that the financial services appears to be booming. So that's my 10 cents anyway.
As long as there is a business, you'll need a lawyer and an accountant. If there is a business, you'll need both.
So one more question come through, because I think we're getting close to the end there. So if anybody has any questions, get them in now. What recommendations overall would you give to someone interested in this field?
I would say just expose yourself to it as early as possible. Like you said, get your head down, make sure that you do well in school, because it's all going to come back to you at some point. And then work hard, show that you're willing to learn, willing to progress. You don't have to be an expert on day one, but as long as you're willing to learn and you show that you're willing to learn, you'll succeed.
Thank you. Emily, any notes on that one at all? Putting you on the spot now.
No, definitely. I echo everything. Jorge just said, but I was thinking of even internally in the firm, the way we rate the employee's performance. We have this framework, which is the Pwc framework, and which looks into business acumen and technology, global and inclusive, because nowadays it's all about diversity and inclusion. We try to encourage that as much as possible. I would say, as an individual, just connect, as your organization is called. Connect as much as possible, create those networks, go to CPA, participate if accounting is the world you want to be in. Definitely be around those who has the knowledge, who can share their expertise with you, their guidance. At the end of the day, you don't have to follow their path, but I would say definitely seek guidance of those who've already been through it. And then that way, then you can have a better understanding. And I would say even for accounting as a whole, I think not a lot of people realize that there's two separate type of accounting. There's the accounting that we do, and then there's managerial accounting. So that's like two different things. So I would say just have even just a basic knowledge understanding of what you're getting into. But then at the end of the day, once you're a qualified accountant, if that's what you want to do, like I keep on saying, the world is your oyster. You don't have to be that forever. It's just your foundation, which would be a solid one.
And if you're at the undergraduate level, one thing that is, the world is changing and accounting is not staying behind. Get exposure to data analytics, data automation, because that has been a big push recently, moving towards using automated systems, robotic automation.
Mm-hmm.
Even in accounting, it's not just the factory, the car picking the pieces and putting them together. There's software for accounting as well, for analyzing data. So that's something that you can expose yourself to during your university years. And it's something that will set you apart, because accounting is doing a big push for that as well.
Yeah, that's very, very true.
Yeah, we're all about technology here.
Yep.
It's very true. Seeing somebody who can code when it's not necessarily part of their job, there's something very interesting and enticing about interviewing that person, because they've gone to that extreme to have an interest in something in their technology, and I think it's always very interesting. We have one last question.
Yep.
Somebody has asked, if I'm interested in the accounting field, but currently working in another industry due to financial reasons, are there any opportunities for me to get experience in the accounting industry without it conflicting with my job?
It depends on what the other field is. It depends whether there's an overlap or not. Generally, if you have a full-time job, it's going to be difficult, I would say.
I mean, my advice to you would be perhaps the experience you would need to get might be from the education side. So looking at night school and starting to, even if it's not the full qualification, just starting to get some experience in that field to see if you've got an interest and to show people you have an interest. And that might then help you evolve in your current role. As Jorge is saying, is there a possibility for you to help out in the accounts department and then start to grow from there? Generally, if from a recruiter's perspective, if you're looking to change industry but need to stay in the industry you're in while you're doing it, it's just going to be a longer journey, and you're going to have to show how interested you are with it, with some kind of training, going to the associations and going to conferences and doing it that way. I don't know if you have anything else to add to that as well.
Yeah, and depending on how flexible your current employer is, you can ask to shadow the accounting department or get some experience. The accounting department will always be busy. They will accept help. So they might, depending on how the hierarchy is and how closed down and confidential they decide their things are, they might allow you to go and get some experience apart from your job into their accounting department or bookkeeping department. You can start with bookkeeping and move on to accounting, slightly separate, bookkeeping and accounting, but one will eventually lead to the other one.
Yeah, no, for sure. I completely agree with Jorge, because internally that's something we facilitate from time to time. We call them like secondments. Like we'd have someone in one department who would do like, let's say, a 3-month secondment and a different department to get like some sort of understanding of what goes on there, if that's their area of interest. But of course that comes with business needs as well, because then you have to find someone to cover them in their current spot and then find a spot for them where they're going. But I mean, that's to say it even if your current employer is not currently doing something like that, you could always communicate that to them, and maybe that might be an idea they might be open to and implement in their organization.
Sorry there, I was on mute, couldn't find my mute button. Thank you very much. I'm always conscious of sticking to time, especially when it's getting close to 7 p.m. I want to say thank you so much to all those who've attended today, and a special thanks, of course, to Jorge and Emily for coming on and sharing their knowledge. It's always so amazing to be able to hear from people who are in it, doing it, understanding it, because we're well aware that sort of job searching, career planning is such a big thought when you're in the middle of it. So thank you for providing clarity and for sharing your expertise. The panel discussion will be on our YouTube channel. Didn't even know we had one, so I'm very excited. I was like, wow, YouTube channel, brilliant. So we will be sharing on that, and of course this will be available to anybody who's working with us on the Connect team, as sort of Ask the Experts download as well. But thank you very much. Your time is precious, I know, in this market. Everybody's very busy. So thank you again, and have a very nice evening, everyone.